This is CBC Vancouver News.
If we don't start today, we're not going to see the changes that we need in the future.
Surrey Memorial Hospital doctors and BC's health minister meet amid serious staffing worries. Who was and wasn't there?
And we have some communities that have hidden from growth, but that just is not acceptable when you're in a housing crisis.
BC's housing minister puts 10 cities on notice. Time to build more housing faster, or the government may step in.
There's just no words to express how I feel.
She deserved to live a long life, and she deserves justice.
And hundreds of people march in memory of a young Indigenous girl on Vancouver Island. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. It was a startling evening for some people on Vancouver's Commercial Drive. Video shows police taking down a person on the sidewalk with what appears to be a beanbag gun. This is part of a video sent to us and a warning it may be upsetting for some viewers. It happened just after 8 p.m. on Commercial Drive near Kitchener Street, outside several restaurants. It's not yet clear what led to the takedown or the condition of the person shot. We have contacted Vancouver Police, EHS, as well as BC's police watchdog. People in the area say the man on the ground may have had a taser or other weapon prompting officers to move in on them, but again, that is not confirmed. Just after 8, police moved in on a person just at that corner after video shows them shooting what looks like a beanbag gun. Langley RCMP say one person has died after a 3-vehicle collision on a busy road late this afternoon. It happened at the intersection of 16th Avenue and 200th Street just after 5. A silver car eastbound on 16th can be seen crushed by a dump truck, while a second truck is parked nearby. Police say one driver died at the scene, while 2 other drivers were not hurt. It's not clear what led to this crash. 16th Avenue between 200th and 208 has been closed for several hours. Doctors at Surrey Memorial Hospital sat down with BC's health minister today amid an onslaught of scathing letters detailing worsening conditions at that hospital. Doctors call it a good step, but want more funding promises. John Hernandez has more on who was and wasn't there.
Just 2 days after taking her anguish public, Dr. Claudine Stornis-Bliss and her team met face-to-face with BC's health minister.
You can't work on a problem if you don't acknowledge there's a problem in the first place.
That problem is an ongoing crisis at Surrey Memorial, highlighted over the past 2 weeks by a cascade of letters detailing inadequate resources that have taken a toll on patients, including the alleged death of a newborn. Health Minister Adrian Dix acknowledged the mounting problem during a private meeting with doctors here at Fraser Health headquarters. Stornis-Bliss called it a victory.
We were also successful in establishing an open line of communication with the minister for our team to continue to have these conversations.
But what was missing was a firm commitment to funding, particularly for the struggling OBGYN unit.
Our unit is busting at the seam. It's far too small for what we do. And there is no more space in the hospital. It's not like we can take over another unit. We need a brand new unit.
And disappointment that Fraser Health's CEO wasn't there.
I was very much hoping to meet with Victoria Lee today.
It was a decision Dr. Lee and I actually made just to make sure that everyone felt they had a chance to speak to me directly.
The health minister saying he's in full support of the leadership of the struggling health authority, instead putting blame on past governments.
Surrey in particular, and Fraser Health in particular, suffered most from decisions made for the 10 years before I became Minister of Health, which did not provide adequate funding for healthcare services.
Dix said more meetings are planned in the days ahead as they look to come up with long-term solutions, the urgency weighing heavy on the front lines.
If we don't start today, we're not going to see the changes that we need in the future. And what everybody is looking for is hope.
Hope to curb a crisis that's well past its boiling point. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
The BC government is putting 10 cities in our province on notice. Time to build a lot more housing and fast. And as Mira Baines reports, if they don't, the government is prepared to step in.
BC's housing minister made it clear communities across the province are expected to meet the government's housing targets.
And we have some communities that have hidden from growth, but that just is not acceptable when you're in a housing crisis.
The 10 cities on the province's watch list are Abbotsford, Delta, Kamloops, District of North Vancouver, Oak Bay, Saanich, Port Moody, Vancouver, Victoria, and District of West Vancouver. Final targets for each municipality will be released later this summer. The cities will have 6 months to come up with plans to meet the targets, or the province will bring in an independent advisor
that will help find where the barriers may be and help them make progress. And if we find that that progress isn't being made, then we have the ability as a province to step in and make the decisions we believe are necessary to ensure affordable housing in communities.
Calon points out cities control rezoning and permitting for housing, but it will take time to build more.
This isn't going to lead to like cheap housing in the next year by any means, but it will begin the process of improved land use and better affordability.
Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim supports the plan.
At the City of Vancouver, it's a top priority to build as much housing as quickly as possible. Where we come in is the number one challenge is the permitting process takes way too long.
Critics argue the province also needs to ensure that cities can accommodate growth first. Districts of North Vancouver and West Vancouver are on the list, but struggle with traffic congestion, among other issues.
Is this a heavy-handed tool? Perhaps it is. Does it make sense to impose housing targets in a community where they need first to create the infrastructure in order to be able to support that?
So far, mayors are mostly on board with the plan, but are still waiting for those housing targets. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
An employee at a New Westminster Recovery Centre has now been charged with 3 counts of sexual assault. Vancouver's 50-year-old Adam Haber is accused by several women dating back about a decade. He worked for Westminster House, a residential addiction recovery centre for youth, girls and women. A now deleted online biographer said he was a fitness instructor. Police say they have spoken with 11 alleged victims so far.
Our investigators do believe that there are other witnesses, other victims out there, and we would like to speak to them. We'd encourage anyone who has been a victim or survivor of these offenses to contact our investigators at 604-529-2430.
Westminster House tells CBC News it severed ties with Haber when the allegations surfaced. The family of a BC woman who went missing more than a decade ago in northern BC has now issued a statement after her remains were discovered earlier this week. Madison Scott was 20 years old when she vanished from a campsite just southeast of Vanderhoof in 2011. Her family was notified on Sunday that her remains had been found. They plan to put Maddie to rest, but nothing is planned yet. In a statement, the Scott family says, while there has been some relief that Maddie has been found, we are left with many questions that now motivated us to find answers to truly bring her home. We are astonished at the outpouring of support received from family, friends, and our communities. Hundreds of people, meanwhile, took to the streets of Duncan today to mourn the death of a local Indigenous teenager and call for justice. 15-year-old Carsyn Seaweed died shortly after she was found near the Trans-Canada Highway earlier this month. The CBC's Michelle Gassoub was there today as her family demanded answers.
From across Vancouver Island, they came, hundreds marching in honor of a teenager lost. 15-year-old Carsyn Seaweed disappeared here in Duncan on May 14th. She was found clinging to life. She died the next day. Today, the mourners march snaked through town, ending at the soccer field where the teenager was last seen.
Being here just makes it real for me, like I gave my daughter her last hug right over there.
I'm the father of Carsyn, and there's just no words to express how I feel.
Today's march, a gathering for Seaweed's Namgis and Cowichan communities to heal, and a rallying cry.
This is a call for justice. Our people are being targeted. We need to all stand together for safety of this community.
And it is incredibly important that we find justice for all the missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, men, and boys.
Police are investigating the circumstances surrounding her death as suspicious and say the case is a top priority. Seaweed's family confident in the investigation and asking anyone who knows something to come forward.
It's hard. I just want justice for my daughter. I want to find out who did that to her, who left her there, because someone meant for her to be there.
The girl with an infectious laugh and a love for her sister and grandmother, missed by so many here.
The beautiful, happy teenager she deserved to live a long life, and she deserves justice.
Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Duncan.
To other news now, businesses in Surrey are calling on Ottawa to stop future salmon farm closures, saying it's threatening hundreds of jobs in the city.
This will be catastrophic to the industry. It will effectively close the sector. It will effectively reduce jobs significantly.
The federal government shut down 15 farms off the coast of BC earlier this year to protect wild fish from the potential risks of disease from farmed fish. The Surrey Board of Trade argues those closures have chipped away at revenues and could threaten the 300 full-time jobs in the city connected to salmon aquaculture. This includes jobs in processing, shipping, and packaging. Wildfires in BC are expected to flare up again as more hot, dry weather hits this province. Environment Canada says rain is not expected in our forecast as temperatures continue rising into next week. In northeastern BC, the Donny Creek wildfire has grown to almost 1,700 square kilometers, triggering more evacuation orders from the Peace River Regional District. On Vancouver Island, a wildfire burning out of control near the community of Seaweed is holding steady at just under a square kilometer. The man who broke into a Vancouver bakery, stole some cupcakes, snapped a photo, and then cleaned up his own mess is now apologizing to the store's owner.
We got a call to the bakery from our cleanly burglar, and he asked to speak to me, so my staff arranged a time for us to chat. He gave me a call and he profusely apologized. He was honestly so sweet. I have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for this guy. He has offered to pay for the door. He's offered to pay for the cupcakes.
Security footage from Suite Something in Dunbar shows the man kicking in the bakery's glass door early Friday morning. After loitering inside for half an hour, he mops up the broken glass and grabs a box of 6 chocolate cupcakes with champagne-flavored buttercream icing before leaving, as you do. Irvine says the burglar has offered to pay for the door and those cupcakes. They talked about having him visit the bakery to have a laugh over some of the coveted sweets.
I haven't heard anybody who's for it. I've talked to lots of people who are against it.
News of Old McDonald's coming to town has Kimberley residents divided. More on the debate in the Kootenays after the break. And thank you for watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. In Ontario, the government's plan to allow more housing to be built on farmland is meeting stiff opposition from farmers. And as Mike Crawley tells us, the blowback is prompting officials to consider backing down.
As warm weather hits southern Ontario, here at Twin Erin Farms, it's time to spray the soybean crop. Zach Cahoon's farm is near Port Perry, a 90-minute drive from downtown Toronto. He farms around 700 hectares. You could fit 1,000 football fields on that and still have room to spare.
This is my domain. I live in the middle of a 250-acre field, and I would have it no other way.
Ontario is currently losing farmland at such a rate that 1/4 of what's left is on track to disappear in just 25 years. With the Ford government targeting 1.5 million new homes in the next decade, Zach Cahoon fears it could happen even faster.
Destroying some of the best farmland in Ontario and Canada for housing.
The Ford government wants to change Ontario's land use rules to allow up to 3 new housing lots on any parcel of agricultural land in the province. All across Ontario, farmers are calling it a bad idea.
Because it will never be farmland again once there's a house on it.
Mark Reeser is a turkey farmer on land about 10 minutes from the western edge of Kitchener.
Farmers, like everyone, recognize that there's a need to find places for people to live. But perhaps it shouldn't be on farmland. It should be somewhere else.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me when we have urban centers that are well serviced.
Premier? Doug Ford says the intent of the plan is so that farmers can build homes for their families.
But the number one complaint that I get when I go to the farms, I want my kids to stay on the farm, and there is certain jurisdictions that won't allow you to build an additional residence.
But farming groups say the plan opens the door to much more housing than that. They say Ontario has plenty of space to build the homes it needs without sacrificing prime agricultural land.
We're going to come up with a happy compromise and work with the farmers.
Although Ford's housing minister isn't promising to scrap the original plan, he's now telling farmers he'll consider alternatives. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Scugog Township.
You might remember about a year ago, CBC held a competition to find BC's best small town. And after hundreds of thousands of votes, the Kootenay community of Kimberley came out on top. We had a lot of fun broadcasting live from there. But as Justin McElroy now tells us, Kimberley is having a heated debate on a big burger corporation possibly moving in.
Kimberley. It's a community with a giant cuckoo clock, the province's largest municipal park, and last year was named BC's best small town in a province-wide vote organized by CBC. But right now, they're going through some stuff.
I haven't heard anybody who's for it. I've talked to lots of people who are against it.
I know a lot of people are really upset. I can't say big city bullshit, can I? It's big city bullshit that we just don't need.
And what big city problem has come to BC's best small town? Yes, Kimberley might soon be exposed to Grimace and the Hamburglar. A rezoning application has been resubmitted for an industrial area on the edge of town, with McDonald's currently penciled in as the tenant if approved. Now, it still needs to be voted on, but if given the green light, the first thing visitors entering Kimberley would see would be the Golden Arches. And plenty of people aren't loving it.
I think everybody who lives here in Kimberley does believe that we're the best small town anyway. We love this town, and what most people come here for and what we love about it is that we really are a healthy community.
Hundreds of people have signed petitions or written letters, and many of them have referenced our contest, saying that a McDonald's would ruin the vibe or goes against what we stand for and would tarnish the brand. But to the mayor, it's all a little overheated.
It's kind of puzzling to me because companies like that, and whether we're talking McDonald's or Tim Hortons or a number of these other national brands, they are good, they're owned by franchisees. These are local people. There is payroll that goes into the community. They support local sports teams and events in town.
That is true, and Kimberley already has an A&W and a Subway. But a McDonald's means something more. Here is a chart. It shows the number of small towns in BC with certain retail chains. Now, almost everyone has a Subway, but a McDonald's? That's more of a Dunkin' idea, a Merit idea, the sort of thing that leads to a Starbucks and a Boston Pizza, and then all of your youth will be frittering away their noontime, suppertime, short time too at the local Walmart. And that's trouble, with a capital M.
When it's a mom and pop shop, it's different. It's a lot more personal, and so what makes this community so great is the neighborliness and knowing who you're talking to.
Now, it might all sound a bit over the top, but people choose where they live both for what's there and what's not. And no matter the size of a town, a simple debate around a symbol can quickly turn into a McFlurry of a controversy. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here's a fun story courtesy of our radio colleagues. Our afternoon show On the Coast recently asked their listeners to pitch an original film or TV show that could be shot in Metro Vancouver in about 30 seconds or less. They got about 100 submissions over 5 days. One of the callers not only heard his pitch played and discussed on the radio, his reaction was also caught on video.
Pitch number 2, 2 immigrants who work in a furniture warehouse. Let's hear this one.
The TV show is based on 2 migrants who recently moved from India to Vancouver. They work in a furniture warehouse for now. They dreamed of opening up a restaurant together since their hospitality study days, only to be shut down by realtors because they're a new concept and not a chain of restaurants. It's based on ongoing true events. It's my friends and my story.
Oh, now, the reason I like this is it has characters. It comes from a place of authenticity.
Yes.
This is this person's story, which gives it so many legs.
Yes. Yeah, that just sounds like a show I want to watch.
Yeah.
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 And soon after our conversation, he got a call from his wife and shared his happiness.
Oh, no. Because they're talking about my pitch on radio.
So that was Indiraj Gill. He's an Uber driver who gave us that great pitch for a TV show. So he's not in his car listening right now because he's here in studio with us now. Indiraj, hello. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, Gloria. This is unbelievable. I'm still pinching myself.
So you were listening to the show. We're putting the call out for pitches. What did you say? Yeah, I want to do this. I got an idea for a TV show.
This was actually in the making. And then you guys came along with this pitch perfect idea. I already had it in my mind. I just wrote it down on my iPad because you said that it had to be in 30 seconds.
Right.
So I realized there was a huge gap, with Indian food and convenience and healthy. So that's the idea of the restaurant.
Please check back with us. We want to follow this one through.
Of course I will.
And in the meantime, Indiraj, we have an On the Coast sweatshirt for you as well. Okay.
I'm going to rock this sweatshirt for sure.
Thank you for coming in. What a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you for having me here, Gloria. Thank you.
Well done, Indiraj. That's awesome. Here is a live shot of Stelegen Hutloshen. That is the indigenous name for the Queen Elizabeth Theatre Plaza. It's a coolish start to the day on the South Coast, if you didn't notice, but it's looking anything but coolish next week. Johanna will have your BC-wide weather forecast right after this.
A lab at Simon Fraser University. A scientist searches for clues. There's $11 billion at stake here, and this is the culprit. It's called the varroa mite. The varroa mite lives its life feeding off the honeybee. For 20 years, it's been slowly infiltrating North America's honeybee population.
The bees that have had varroa in their cell while they're developing come out, and they're often really deformed.
But why would a deformed honeybee population cost North Americans $11 billion a year? Well, for that, you must think back to grade 4 science class.
Pollination is nothing more than plant sex, except the male and the female parts of the plants are fairly separate, and you have to get the pollen, which is like the sperm, onto the female part of the flower so it can fertilize the egg.
And that's what the honeybee does. At least 1/3 of what we eat depends on the pollination process. Without it, everyone from the backyard gardener to the fruit farmer would be in a lot of trouble.
It's a process. Like at a certain time, you got to bring the blueberry. For the blueberries, you got to bring the bees in, so that they can pollinate.
11 acres of high-yielding plants are grown here. That translates into more than 50 million flowers waiting for pollination. Vic Bakshi grew up on this blueberry farm.
I think a lot of people that don't have farms just think, they see a bee and they think, here comes a sting, but to us, they're basically, before blueberry season starts, they basically run the farm.
We estimate that here in British Columbia alone,
over $100 million annually of agricultural production is directly attributable to honeybee pollination.
British Columbia's honeybees aren't in any real danger of extinction yet, but the Varroa mite is here. It invades honeycombs and then burrows into bee larvae. It can also attach itself to adult bees.
It's sucking on its hemolymph, or blood.
Problem is, these mites, no bigger than a flea, have begun to build up a resistance to the only pesticide known to kill them.
It's just a matter of whether we can find something faster than the mite can develop resistance. If resistance really comes in a heavy way within the next couple of years, the industry has very little to back up.
All the bees are dead, and you can also see mites, and they are dead as well. So this dose was too high.
The race is on to find a new way of killing mites.
Mites are dead, bees are alive. So that's a very exciting result to me, because it means that this could potentially be used in a colony.
I'm totally confident that we're going to be able to deal with this problem, because we are putting a lot of effort into it. There's a lot of really fine students working on these problems, and we've been making a lot of progress. And I'm pretty sure that something will work.
And if it doesn't?
If it doesn't work, then beekeeping is going to be in some serious trouble.
It's not just beekeepers that will be in serious trouble. We all will be. For Broadcast One, I'm Deborah Goebel.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
On June 13th, join CBC's Rudy Kelly at the Alumni UBC's free webinar with Dr. Jeanette Armstrong on revitalizing Indigenous language. Register at alumni.ubc.ca and register for the CBC's Indigenous Pathways to Journalism program. This paid 9-month learning and development opportunity supports Indigenous candidates to hone their skills as storytellers. Learn more at cbc.ca/pathways.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace, installing the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast as we end off May with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Started off a bit coolish there, a little bracing. Not too bad.
Not the month.
No.
We started off the month with a hot start,
Yeah.
but we are
Little
ending
dewy.
seasonal. Yes.
Yeah.
And we began today on a very seasonal note as well. You're right, it was cool for the past couple of days, back down to seasonal. Take a look at the temperatures we hit across the south coast, almost bang on compared to the last 30-year average, right across Metro Vancouver into the Fraser Valley, hitting the high teens as well across the island. Very similar temperatures today for Victoria than where you were at yesterday. A little cooler as well for the interior, just 24, and through Kelowna, you were more like a 27 yesterday. So seasonal to end, but certainly not seasonal for the month of May. We have been dry and above seasonal, and I'll show you a forecast for the next couple of months in a moment. Things are changing, though. We've got this onshore flow, and that's what's brought the clouds and showers. We saw that lingering cloud through Metro Vancouver for much of our day. The next couple systems, low pressure system coming in from the west, that's going to impact the northwest, and high pressure ridge really attempting to build. That's what's going to bring us the heat in the short range forecast. In the long range forecast, wanted to show you Environment and Climate Change Canada's long range outlook. And this is really in line with a lot of climate models. Look at the whole country. Fairly good chance that we're going to come in above seasonal for the next 3 months. And that goes for much of the West Coast as well. Really El Nino to blame, a strong building El Nino. And we are seeing those temperatures really warm up as we head into early next week. We'll be hitting those 30s inland, and for Metro Vancouver, getting close to it as we head into early next week. So we'll start to feel those temperatures back into the low 20s by the time we hit Friday. A very pleasant weekend. We are worried about drought conditions. I've got no rain in the forecast through most of next week. And Dan, look at that, Tuesday, Wednesday, high 20s, getting close to heat wave levels. So we'll be keep an eye on a lot of factors early next week.
Lots to keep an eye on.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
That is your late news for Wednesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. It begins tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a good night.